Hey, what is going on, guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video we're going to be breaking down 5 of the biggest reasons as to why you're hard stuck and what steps that you need to take in order to make it to the next rank. So if we start things off here with number 1, this might sound a little bit strange, so just hear me out on this one, but a lot of people are hard stuck because they're just playing too many games. And what I really mean by this is that they're playing too many games just on autopilot, not fully focused, not actually trying to improve. And if you play 7 to 10 games a day and you're just always autopiloting, you're never learning from any of your mistakes, then it doesn't matter how many games you play, you're never going to get better. It's much more efficient for you to play 3 to 4 games a day. Make sure you're extremely focused in those games. Make sure you're just always trying to improve from every mistake you make in each game, and you're gonna find yourself climbing a lot faster. So you just really want to try to focus on getting the quality out of your games instead of the quantity. It's gonna help you a ton in the long term, and you can apply this kind of thing to like a lot of different aspects of life. For example, if you're working out, if you're going to the gym, if you go 7 days a week and you're going a lot, you're going consistently, but you're just not increasing the amount of weight you're lifting throughout going to the gym consistently, then you're not really gonna see much progress over time. And that's kind of the same thing with League. Like if you're not actually trying to improve at anything, you're not increasing the amount of weight that you're lifting, you're not increasing the amount of knowledge you're getting out of each game, then you're not actually going to see very much progress over time. You just want to make sure you never continue playing if you feel tilted or if you're not in the right mental state to play. I would really recommend like having a Smurf account that you can play on. Like if you still want to play a lot of League, if you find yourself tilted, then just go on a Smurf account, play on that for the rest of the day. Just make sure when you're playing on your main account that you're not tilted at all, you're in the right mental state, and you're giving your best effort every single game. A good way to get yourself in the zone before you start a game is when you're in the loading screen, just start analyzing both team compositions, take a look at win conditions, look at your matchups, start visualizing your matchup, think to yourself like, okay, what do I need to do if that champion uses this ability at this time? What can I look to counter with? Just run down a bunch of different scenarios in your head so that once you get into that game, when you actually have to execute the play, you're going to be able to execute it with much better perfection. And then also you can look to take some deep breaths as well when you're in the loading screen. Just close your eyes, get in the right mindset, and that's really going to help you in your games. So for number 2 here, you're more focused on your teammates' mistakes than yours, and this is something that really plagues a lot of low elo players, and it's something that really holds people back from climbing. I just had a game actually a couple days ago to where I had a Rengar jungle on my team. Our top laner wasn't doing very well in the game. Like our top laner was like 0-5 or something. He was feeding, but the Rengar was more focused on like how bad our top laner was than what he could actually do to end up like winning the game. So what ended up happening is that we got to a mid-game fight. We were doing fine. Like it didn't matter how bad our top laner was. We could still win the game, but we got to the mid to late game. Our Rengar just made a really bad mistake. He didn't end up like one-shotting the enemy Lucian on the enemy team. He ended up just dying before the fight even started, and he provided nothing for our team in that fight. And then he just continued to blame our top laner for losing us the game, when in reality, if he would have been like focused on the game, if he would have played to his potential, we would have still ended up winning that game. So you really got to do your best to just put aside what your teammates are doing. Do not focus on the mistakes they're making, because you are the only constant in every single game. You're the only person you can control, and if you truly deserve a certain rank, you will get there over time. Also, if you're spending your time focused on your teammates' mistakes, like if you're typing to your teammate telling them they made a bad play or something, it's not only going to tilt yourself, but it's also going to tilt your teammate. And typing to your teams like telling them they made a bad play or something, it's not going to make them play better. If anything, it's going to make them play worse. So there's just really no point in doing it. You just want to move on. If your teammate makes a bad play, don't dwell on it and think about the next play. Use your energy and use your time to type to your team what the next play should be, instead of typing to them as to how bad they played a recent play. If you can start to look at each and every scenario as to how could I have improved instead of how could have my teammate improved, it's really going to help you in the long term, because yes, there's going to be scenarios to where you've played it almost perfectly and you couldn't do anything and your teammates just played it badly. You're going to have those scenarios, but I can almost guarantee that probably 90% of the time when your teammate makes a bad play or something, or when you lose a team fight, there's at least something you could have done differently that you can look to apply to your future games. So for number 3, you're just dying too much for no reason, and a really good way to just stop dying too much for no reason is to always focus on what the next objective is on the map. So for example, if you have Dragon coming up in 2 minutes, then you shouldn't really be looking to play towards topside and fight on the top side of the map. Just look to group for that Dragon, or look to start transitioning over to that Dragon, get vision around it, sweep vision, and then just be set up for when the enemy comes in to face check you. When they face check, that's when you look to fight, and that's gonna almost guarantee that you win every single fight and that you guarantee objectives. So you should just be always focused on playing around that next objective, and it's gonna really do a great job for you at just limiting your deaths for no reason. So what you want to do is just go look at your replays, take a look at all of your deaths in your games, take a look at games where you have like a ton of deaths, and just ask yourself, how could I have prevented these deaths in this game? If you notice a common theme in a lot of your games, say you're dying to like a level 3 gank almost every single game, if they're playing a strong level 3 ganking jungler, if the enemy team has something like an Elise, a Lee Sin, an Olaf who can gank level 3, then just make sure you're respecting that more, make sure you're warding or just playing a little bit back in lane at that 2 minutes 45-second timer, because that's when they can look to gank at level 3. If you end up playing towards topside when that dragon's spawning and you end up dying, then just make sure in your future games that doesn't happen again. A lot of players don't have an issue getting leads in the early game and just getting an advantage for themselves in lane, but what happens a lot of the time is they just end up throwing that advantage because they just go for kills for no reason. So for example, if you have a couple kill lead on your opponent and you got shut down gold, then why are you trying to make a dive play under their tower and risking like a 50-50 solo kill when that kill really doesn't matter? Like the amount of gold, the amount of XP you're gonna give over to the enemy for risking that 1v1 when you're already ahead is just not worth it. So when you are ahead in the early game, when you got a super big lead, you don't need to make those risky plays. Just look to play around that next objective and then look to fight, because it's going to give you the best chance for you to just close out games cleanly. So for number 4 here, this is the one that can increase your rank the quickest in the shortest amount of time, and that is just watch players who are better than you, watch pro play, watch Twitch streams, watch videos on YouTube of any player that is better than you, of that champion that you play, and just take in the information from those games. So look at what they're doing differently from what you do in your games. If you notice they're doing something differently, then just implement that into your games and into your future games, and it's just going to drastically improve your play over a short period of time. This really goes for if you're trying to improve at anything in life. You don't just suddenly become one of the best in the world at something, or you don't just suddenly become really good at something. A lot of the best players in the world, like for any sport or for any esport, they become the best because they learn from others and they're taking in the most information from others. They're just learning quicker, learning faster, always trying to improve. So if you really want to like get good at anything, then just learning from people who are better than you is going to be one of the best ways to do so. So how I would recommend executing this is just watch streams or watch pro play, watch YouTube videos, and then just write down a couple different things that they're doing differently than what you do in your games, and then write those down. Make sure in your future games that you're focused on them before you go into each game. Just look at those like on your sheet of paper or on your notepad, and just make sure that you apply those to your future games. Then if you can just make those things habits, and then if you can always continuously try to improve, write down new things that you can improve on, then you're gonna get better over time, like no question about it. And then lastly here, number 5, to round out the video, you're trusting your teammates too much and you're just relying on your teammates too much for information or just to win you games. So what you want to start doing in your future games is just try to be the carry, make the calls, take the kills, do not rely on your team for anything. If you're never the one making the calls yourself for certain objectives or certain plays on the map, then how do you actually expect to get better macro-wise, and how do you actually expect to improve your game knowledge? It's going to take you a lot longer of a time to improve your game knowledge if you're not actually the one making the calls, because if you're the one making the calls, you're going to be a lot more cognizant of whether that call went right or whether that call went wrong, and then in your future games, you can look to just fix that mistake. So if it's a bad call, that's actually good, because then in your future games, you know that you're not going to make that same mistake again. You know you're not going to make that same call, and this is just going to allow you to improve over time, which is what you should be focused on the most. You just have to stop expecting your team to even make the simplest of plays or be on the side of the map at a certain time to where you would expect them to be. So always look to call out objective timers. Like if a dragon is spawning in a minute or a minute and a half, then look to call that out. Call that out like a lot of time prior to it. Don't just call it out like 20 seconds before it spawns or something. Call it out a minute or a minute and a half before it spawns. Tell your team to group for dragon. Don't use cooldowns. Save your cooldowns. Let's get vision around dragon. And if you can do that, you're just going to notice such an improvement in how your team plays actually as a team, because if you're not making these calls, what you'll see even in higher elos is I'll see my jungler like farming the top side of his jungle with 20 seconds until dragon spawns. We won't be grouped for that dragon. The enemy team will just have full control over it, and we'll just end up getting picked off, and we'll lose the game because I just didn't type out like group for dragon or play for this next dragon. So making calls is something that everybody can improve on, and if you start to implement it into your games, you're going to notice a very big improvement. It's not even calling out objective timers either. There's so many different things you can look to call out throughout the entirety of the game. For example, if the enemy burns flash in the laning phase, look to call that out. You don't even really need to time it. Like it would ideally be best for you to time the enemy's flash, but you can just say in chat, enemy flash down, look to gank here, and your jungler is going to be much more likely to gank your lane if the enemy does not have flash, because the chances of him getting a kill and him getting something out of it is much higher. Also, if you see the enemy jungler on the map, or if you see a roam play happening, don't just expect your team to notice it. Even if the enemy jungler is over a ward, or even if like the enemy mid laner's roaming and he's over a ward, expect your team to just not be looking at the map. Ping that out, spam ping them, make sure that they know that the enemy is roaming, or make sure they know where the enemy is on the map. Another thing I've been looking to implement into my games recently is call a roam play before it even happens. So for example, if I notice that the enemy is shoving my wave in and they're about to roam here, then I'll just call it before it even happens. So just say enemy mid has roam here, or enemy mid is going to look to roam. And if you can call that before it even happens, then your teammate's gonna play a little bit safer. The chances of them noticing that in chat goes up, because like if you type it when they're roaming, like if they're in the river, if they're already roaming, then chances are if you type it, your teammates like might not see it, they might not glance at chat in time. But if you're typing it out well before it happens, and if you're pinging it well before it happens, then it's just going to increase the chances of your team not dying from a gank or just not dying from a roam. Alright, so that is going to be all for the video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy, and hopefully you can look to implement these 5 different things here in your future games to help you improve and help you reach that next rank. So if you guys did enjoy the video, be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you have yet to already. So thanks for watching, have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.